bhutam nabholingam alingam ishwaram aham cha tasmai mahatam mahiyasi sirna vana man vidhate nu kampita. Translation. Then the supreme authority, personified by sound and unseen by eyes, but most wonderful, stopped speaking. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I offered my obeisances unto him, bowing my head. Purport. That the personality of Godhead was not seen but only heard does not make any difference. The personality of Godhead produced the four Vedas by his breathing, and he is seen and realized through the transcendental sound of the Vedas. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita is the sound representation of the Lord, and there is no difference in identity. The conclusion is that the Lord can be seen and heard by persistent chanting of the transcendental sound. Text 26. Namani antasya hata tripta prathan guhyani bhadrani krita cha smaran gam paryatam stushtamana gatas spraha kalam pratikshan vimado vimat sara. Translation. Thus I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeated recitation, ignoring all the formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembering of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are benedictory. So doing, I traveled all over the earth, fully satisfied, humble, and unenvious. The life of a sincere devotee of the Lord is thus explained in a nutshell by Narada Muni by his personal example. Such a devotee, after his initiation by the Lord or his bona fide representative, takes very seriously chanting of the glories of the Lord and traveling all over the world so that others may also hear the glories of the Lord. Such devotees have no desire for material gain. They are conducted by one single desire to go back to Godhead. This awaits them in due course on quitting the material body. Because they have the highest aim of life going back to Godhead, they are never envious of anyone, nor are they proud of being eligible to go back to Godhead. Their only business is to chant and remember the holy name, fame, and pastimes of the Lord, and according to personal capacity, to distribute the message for others' welfare without motive of material uh, gain. Text 27. Evam Krishna Mate Brahman Nasak Tasya Malatmana Kala Pradura Bhut Kale Tadit Saudam Mani Yatha. Translation. And so, O Brahmana Vyasadeva, in due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna and who had therefore had no attachments, being completely freed from all material taints, met with death as lightning and illumination occur simultaneously. To be fully absorbed in the thought of Krishna means clearance of material dearths or hankerings. As a very rich man has no hankerings from petty things, so also a devotee of Lord Krishna, who is guaranteed to pass on to the kingdom of God where life is eternal, fully cognizant and blissful, naturally has no hankerings for petty material things, which are like dolls or shadows of reality and without permanent value. That is the sign of spiritually enriched persons, and in due course of time, when a pure devotee is completely prepared, all of a sudden the change of body occurs what is commonly called death. And for the pure devotee, such a change takes place exactly like lightning, and illumination follows simultaneously. That is to say, a devotee simultaneously changes his material body and develops a spiritual body by the will of the Supreme. Even before death, a pure devotee has no material affection due to his body's being spiritualized like a red hot iron in contact with fire.
Mataji, you want to summarize?
Okay, yeah.
Share something, whatever you like.
Okay. So basically, just to recap, there were 4 questions that Vyasadeva was quickly recap. Is that Vyasadeva basically asked 4 questions. Is one is what did you do after your to Narada Muni? That is what did you do after initiation to transcendental knowledge? From when you what you got from this from the sages, and then how did you get this particular body as Narada Muni? After you quit the old one, and then how do you remember the activities that happened in Brahma's previous life, and you know tell me how it is fresh in your mind without the effect of time. So from the beginning of the chapter we see that Narada Muni's mother dies. He receives special mercy. He considers it as a mercy, and he goes to the forest. He goes under a banyan tree and meditates, and first he sees the Lord, and then and then he gets very aggrieved when he's not able to see the Lord's form again, and you know he becomes very sad, and then soon the Lord Krishna, or the personality of Godhead, he comes, and he just to alleviate the grief of Narada Muni. He spoke to him certain words, and basically he told him that during this lifetime he won't be able to see him, but then where I really got started was that on verse 22, he says that you have seen my person, like I showed you my person, but that is just, I showed you just so that your desire for me might increase, and you will be more fixed in your devotional service in this lifetime. So you will need a little more maturity, spiritual maturity during this lifetime, where you will become more fixed in my devotional service. And so basically, it's like this text number 22 is saying is that the more one becomes fixed in transcendental service, the more one wants to do. Um, so it's like kind of lolium to become like more and more possessive, about the service of the Lord. So that's what the Lord is telling Narada Muni, that that this lifetime he's going to now become more and more engaged in the transcendental service, and I just showed you my form so that to increase your desire, for my service.
Yeah.
So, um, so then, went on to verse 23, where he says that, when you have, when you are serving the absolute truth, um, then you get a certain amount of intelligence, and, and then you're no longer attached to all kind of material things, and um, a few days of service can give them like him intelligence. And then Prabhupada explains in the purport that for a neophyte person, especially direction of a spiritual master is very valuable, because spiritual master is God, and represents parampara, and so for a neophyte, he says that serving under a spiritual master is absolutely essential, because otherwise, you really don't have an idea on how to advance in devotional service. Uh, then text 24 actually goes on to explain that whenever you're doing devotional service and using your intelligence, then it's not like never wasted. So even if you do like certain amount of devotional service this lifetime, then where after maybe next lifetime you come and you can carry on from there. So it's like not wasted at all. And then Prabhupada explains like the Bhagavad Gita how birth after birth, this accumulation of devotional service keeps on continuing and is never lost. And um, uh, and then so after that, of course, Narad Muni in text 27 offers his obeisances to the Lord. He realizes what the Lord is trying to say, that this lifetime you have to do a little bit more devotional service. And at the end of this lifetime, you'll come to me. Um, and then of course in text 25, it says, even though Prabhupada explains that even though you don't see the Lord in form, but, there is a transcendental literature and, the Lord is always available through that. And then in text 27, uh, it's shown that Narad Muni takes his devotional service very seriously, and then he goes on, chanting the holy name of the Lord, and very seriously. And not only does he chant, but he goes all over the world and he spreads the glories of the Lord. So basically, he does a lot of glorification of Krishna. He gets over all envy, he gets over all material desires, and his only business was, that he would chant and then he would distribute the glories or the messages of the Lord to everyone. Um, and so after that lifetime, when he actually served the Lord very, very faithfully and kind of matured in devotional service, like how the Lord was saying. Uh, then he was ready to, give up his body, and he met with death. And it's very interesting, actually. Text 27 is I found it very interesting because, it explains like how with the devotional service, one's body becomes spiritualized, basically. Especially it's very interesting because during death it's like the change takes place like lightning, especially like for like pure devotees like Narad, and then there's an illumination. So basically Narad Muni, he obtained a spiritual body, and um, so it's not that it takes a long time, it happens like in a second, or like lightning. And so basically, Narad Muni saw the Lord, and uh, then he talked to the Lord, and he utilized his lifetime in developing, in lolium and like more possessiveness to the Lord, in chanting and glorifying the Lord. And at the end of the Lord, he was ready to give up his body, and his body became spiritualized. And
Sure, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mataji. Satyasuta Prabhu, sorry we're running a little late. Got delayed.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry, I got kicked off from Zoom, so I had to rejoin. Yeah.
Okay.
So 28, Prabhu, right? Text 28, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Prayujyamane Mayi Tam Shuddham Bhagavatim Tanum Arabdha Karma Nirvano Nyapatat Pancha Bhautika. Having been awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the personality of Godhead, I quit the body made of 5 material elements, and thus all acquired fruitive results of work karma stopped. Informed by the personality of Godhead that he would be awarded a transcendental body befitting the Lord's association, Narada got his spiritual body as soon as he quits his material body. This transcendental body is free from material affinity and invested with 3 primary transcendental qualities, namely eternity, freedom from material modes, and freedom from reactions of fruitive activities. The material body is always afflicted with the lack of these three qualities. A devotee body becomes at once surcharged with the transcendental qualities as soon as he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. It acts like the magnetic influence of a touchstone upon iron. The influence of a transcendental devotional service is like that. Therefore, change of body means stoppage of the reaction of three qualitative modes of material nature upon the pure devotee. There are many instances of this in the revealed scriptures. Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj and many other devotees were able to see the personality of God at face to face, apparently in the same body. This means that the quality of devotee's body changes from material to transcendence. That is the opinion of the authorized Goswamis via the authentic scriptures. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that beginning from the Indra Gopa germ up to the great Indra, king of the heaven, all living beings are subjected to law of karma and bound to suffer and enjoy the fruitive results of their own work. Only the devotee is exempt from such reactions by the causeless mercy of the Supreme Authority, the Personality of Godhead. X29. Kalpanta idam adya sayane ambasi udhan bata tisyaishor anupranam vise antar aham vibho. At the end of the millennium, when the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, lay down within the water of devastation, Brahma began to enter into him along with all creative elements, and I also entered through his breathing. Narada is known as the son of Brahma, as Lord Krishna is known as the son of Vasudeva. The personality of Godhead and his liberated devotees like Narada appear in the material world by the same process. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, the birth and the activities of the Lord are all transcendental. Therefore, according to authorized opinion, birth of Narada as the son of Brahma is also transcendental pastime. His appearance and disappearance are practically on the same level as that of the Lord. The Lord and his devotees are therefore simultaneously one and different as spiritual entities. They belong to the same category of a transcendence. So, should I continue or summarize? Okay, text 30. Sahasrayuga paryante yuttayetam six sata marichi misra saye pranayabhyoham cha janair. After, what is this? 4300000000 solar years, when Brahma awoke to create again by the will of the Lord, all the rishis like Marichi, Angira, Ati, and so on were created from the transcendental body of the Lord, and I also appeared along with them. The duration of the day in the life of a Brahma is 4 billion solar years. So this is stated also in the Bhagavad Gita. So far this period, Brahmaji rests in Yoga Nidra within the body of a Garbhadaksha Vishnu, the generator of Brahma. Thus, after sleeping period of Brahma, when there is again creation by the will of the Lord through the agency of Brahma, all the great rishis again appear from different parts of the transcendental body, and Narada also appears. This means that Narada appears in the same transcendental body, just as a man awakes from sleep in the same body. Sri Narada is eternally free to move in all parts of the transcendental and material creations of the Almighty. He appears and disappears in his own transcendental body, which is without distinction of a body and soul, unlike the conditioned beings.
Can summarize.
Okay. So in text 28, like the thing which touched me is like we cannot imitate the pure devotees on the great personalities. So we can follow their footsteps without imitating their actions. To our capacities, we can try to do selfless service. So in this case, like Narada Muni, he transformed immediately, leaving his material body to transcendental body in order to continue the service of the Lord. And it is also said that like the magnetic influence of touchstone upon iron. So in our life, we can definitely follow the footsteps of these personalities like Narada Muni, Dhruva Maharaj, and follow according to our capacities in trying to do actions that are favorable for devotional service, so that we can follow the footsteps and attain the bigger benefit of the devotional service.
Are you done, Prabhu? I can start.
Satyasuta Prabhu,
Sure.
thank you so much, Prabhu. I was thinking Lingaraji Prabhu will say something, but
I'm having some challenge in unmuting. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Megham,
Okay.
you want to start from
Yes,
text 31?
Yes, text 31. Antarbahishcha lokamstrim prayamya ashkandita vrataha anugrahan mahavishnu avidhata gatihi kapachit. Translation. Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I travel everywhere without restriction, both in the transcendental world and in the three divisions of the material world. This is because I am fixed in unbroken devotional service of the Lord. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, there are three divisions of the material spheres, namely the Urdhva Loka, topmost planets, Madhya Loka, midway planets, and Adhaloka, downward planets. Beyond the Urdhva Loka planets, that is to say above the Brahma Loka, are the material coverings of the universes, and above that is the spiritual sky, which is unlimited in expansion, containing unlimited self-illuminated Vaikuntha planets, inhabited by God himself, along with his associates, who are all eternally liberated living entities. Sri Narad Muni could enter all these planets in both the material and spiritual spheres without restriction. As much as the Almighty Lord is free to move personally in any part of his creation. In the material world, the living beings are influenced by the three material modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. But Sri Narad Muni is transcendental to all these material modes, and thus he can travel everywhere unrestricted. He is a liberated spaceman. The cosmic mercy of the Lord Vishnu is unparalleled, and such mercy is perceived by the devotees only by the grace of the Lord. Therefore, the devotees never fall down, but the materialists, i.e., the fruitive workers and the speculative philosophers, do fall down, being forced by their respective modes of nature. The rishis, as above mentioned, cannot enter into the transcendental world like Narada. This fact is disclosed in the Nrsimha Purana. Rishis like Marichi are authorities in fruitive work, and rishis like Sanaka and Sanatana are authorities in philosophical speculations. But Sri Narad Muni is the prime authority for the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. All the great authorities in the devotional service of the Lord follow in the footsteps of Narad Muni in order of the Narad Bhakti Sutra, and therefore all the devotees of the Lord are unhesitatingly qualified to enter into the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha. Text 32. Deva dattam imam venam swara brahma vibhushitam murat muchayetva hari katham gaya manas charamyaham. Translation. And thus I travel, constantly singing the transcendental messages of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called a veena, which is charged with transcendental sound and which was given to me by Lord Krishna. Purport. The musical stringed instrument called the veena, which was handed to Narada by Lord Sri Krishna, is described in the Linga Purana, and this is confirmed by Srila Jiva Goswami. This transcendental instrument is identical with Lord Sri Krishna and Narada because all of them are of the same transcendental category. Sound vibrated by the instrument cannot be material, and therefore the glories and pastimes which are broadcast by the instrument of Narada are also transcendental, without a tinge of material inebriety. The 7 singing meters, namely Sa, Sajta, R, Rishabha, Ga, Gandhara, Ma, Madhyama, Pa, Panchama, Dha, Devata, and Ni, Nishada, are also transcendental and specifically meant for transcendental songs. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Sri Narada Deva is always fulfilling his obligation to the Lord for his gift of the instrument, and thus he is always engaged in singing his transcendental glories and is therefore infallible in his exalted position. Following in the footsteps of Srila Narada Muni, a self-realized soul in the material world should also properly use the sound meters, namely Sa, Ra, Ga, Ma, etc., in the service of the Lord by constantly singing the glories of the Lord, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Text 33. Pragayatah swaviryani tirthapadah priya sashravaha ahuta iva me sigram darshanam yati chetasi. Translation. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart, as if called for as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities. Purport. The absolute personality of Godhead is not different from his transcendental name, form, pastimes, and sound vibrations thereof. As soon as the pure devotee engages himself in pure devotional service of hearing, chanting, and remembering the name, fame, and activities of the Lord, at once he becomes visible to the transcendental eyes of the pure devotee by reflecting himself on the mirror of the heart by spiritual television. Therefore, a pure devotee who is related with the Lord in loving transcendental service can experience the presence of the Lord at every moment. It is a natural psychology in every individual case that a person likes to hear and enjoy his personal glories enumerated by others. That is a natural instinct, and the Lord, being also an individual personality like others, is not an exception to this psychology, because psychological characteristics visible in the individual souls are but reflections of the same psychology in the absolute Lord. The only difference is that the Lord is the greatest personality of all and absolute in all his affairs. If, therefore, the Lord is attracted by the pure devotee's chanting of his glories, there's nothing astonishing. Since he is absolute, he can never appear himself in the picture of his glorification, the two things being identical. Srila Narada chants the glorification of the Lord, not for his personal benefit, but because the glorifications are identical with the Lord. Narad Muni penetrates into the presence of the Lord by the transcendental chanting. Text 34. Etadhyatura chittanam matra sparshitya chaya muhuha bhava sindhu plavo drishto Haricharyanu Varnanam. Translation. It is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring content of the senses with their objects can cross the ocean of nations on a most suitable boat. the constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Purport. The symptom of a living being is that he cannot remain silent, even for some time. He must be doing something, thinking of something, or talking about something. Generally, the materialistic men think and discuss about subjects which satisfy their senses. But as these things are exercised under the influence of the external illusory energy, such sensual activities do not actually give them any satisfaction. On the contrary, they become full with cares and anxieties. This is called Maya, or what is not. That which cannot give them satisfaction is accepted as an object for satisfaction. So Narad Muni, by his personal experience, says that satisfaction for such frustrated beings engaged in sense gratification is to chant always the activities of the Lord. The point is that the subject matter only should be changed. No one can check the thinking activities of a living being, nor the feeling, willing, or working processes. But if one wants actual happiness, one must change the subject matter only. Instead of talking of the politics of a dying man, one might discuss the politics administered by the Lord himself. Instead of relishing activities of the cinema artist, one can turn his attention to the activities of the Lord with his eternal associates like gopis and lakshmis. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, by his causeless mercy, descends to the earth and manifests activities almost on the line of the worldly men, but at the same time extraordinarily, because he is almighty. He does so for the benefit of all conditioned souls, so that they can turn their attention to transcendence. By doing so, the conditioned soul will gradually be promoted to the transcendental position and easily cross the ocean of nations, the source of all miseries. This is stated from personal experience by such an authority as Sri Narad Muni. And we can have the same experience also if we begin to follow in the footsteps of the great sage, the dearmost devotee of the Lord. Text 35.
Mataji, you want to summarize or you want to read one more text?
Let me see, the 35. I can summarize. I think I can read one more text, Prabhu.
Okay, Mataji.
Yamadibhir yoga pateha kama lobha hato muhu mukunda sevaya yadvat tatham madhana shamyati. Translation. It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbances of desire and lust, but this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul, for this satisfaction is derived from the devotional service to the personality of Godhead. Purport. Yoga aims at controlling the senses, a practice of the mystic process of bodily exercise in sitting, thinking, feeling, willing, concentrating, meditating, and at last being merged into transcendence. One can control the senses. The senses are considered like venomous serpents, and the yoga system is just to control them. On the other hand, Narad Muni recommends another method for controlling the senses in the transcendental loving service of Mukunda, the personality of Godhead. By his experience, he says that devotional service to the Lord is more effective and practical than the system of artificially controlling the senses. In the service of the Lord Mukunda, the senses are transcendentally engaged. Thus, there's no chance of their being engaged in sense satisfaction. The senses want some engagement. To check them artificially is no check at all, because as soon as there is some opportunity for enjoyment, the serpent-like senses will certainly take advantage of it. There are many such instances in history, just like Vishwamitra Muni's falling a victim to the beauty of Menaka. But Thakur Haridas was allured at midnight by the well-dressed Maya, and still she could not induce that great devotee into her trap. The whole idea is that without devotional service of the Lord, neither the yoga system nor dry philosophical speculation can ever become successful. Pure devotional service of the Lord without being tinged with fruitive work, mystic yoga, or speculative philosophy is the foremost procedure to attain self-realization. Such pure devotional service is transcendental in nature, and the systems of yoga and jnana are subordinate to such a process. When the transcendental devotional service is mixed with the subordinate process, it is no longer transcendental, but it's called mixed devotional service. Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam, will gradually develop all these different systems of transcendental realization in the text. Now I can summarize. So overall, Narad Muni is describing that, devotional service is the best way to control the senses, and use everything that we have. So he had the veena, which was a musical stringed instrument, which he always used in the service of the Lord by singing his glories. So the highlight that I received from that is anything that we have is always a gift from the Lord. So we need to always utilize everything that we have in service to the Lord, and keeping Krishna in the middle, so that we can always be in this stage of satisfaction and happiness, transcendental happiness. And then also if we do always speak and sing the glories of the Lord we can experience the presence of the Lord in our hearts at every moment when we constantly sing his glories. And then in text 34, something that also stuck out with me is that people talk about different things. The senses always needs to be engaged in something. So either they're thinking, they're feeling, and people like to talk about politics and cinema stars and everything. But in the same way, if we can start engaging those senses into speaking about how politics administered by the Lord himself, and then the activities of the Lord with his eternal associates like gopis and lakshmis, then we can actually remain very happy and satisfied, because that is a transcendental bliss that we can feel. And it's not temporary, it's always it's permanent bliss, versus these other subjects matters are always temporary. They don't give satisfaction and happiness constantly. And then also only by devotional service, as I said, is the way to keep the senses in control, because artificial ways of controlling the senses, which is they're saying by yoga system or mystic yoga, they can control senses for time being. It's temporary controlling the senses. But by devotional service, we can constantly, it's more effective and practical. So they get, Prabhupada gives an example of Vishwamitra Muni and Haridas Thakur. So they both had the same, Vishwamitra Muni had the, Menaka, but he became the victim of that. And as on the same, hand, Thakur Haridas, he also had the prostitute that came to him, well-dressed Maya. But because he was engaged in devotional service instead of just the yoga, he could not induce that, she couldn't induce the great devotee into her trap. So the point that I'm trying to make is devotional service is the highest thing that, we can have, and that will give us 100% satisfaction and bliss constantly, versus, trying to control our senses by any other means.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you.
Vachaspati,
Yeah, I'm ready.
your voice is low. Are you talking away from phone?
Is it audible now?
Yeah, now I think it's
Okay. Sarvam tad idam akyatam yad pristo aham tvanagyaha janma karma rahasyam me bhavatatas chatat maptosanam. Translation. O Vyasadeva, you are free from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization as you asked. All this will be conductive of your personal satisfaction also. The process of devotional activities from the beginning to the stage of transcendence is all duly explained to satisfy the inquiries of Vyasadeva. Narada has explained how the seeds of devotional service are sown by transcendental association and how they gradually developed by hearing the sages. The result of such hearing is detachment from worldliness. So much so that even a small boy could receive the news receive the depth news of his mother, who was his only caretaker, as the blessing of God. And at once he took the opportunity to search out the Lord. A sincere urge for having an interview with the Lord was granted to him, although it is not possible for anyone to see the Lord with mundane eyes. He also explained how, by execution of pure transcendental service, one can get rid of the fruitive action of accumulated work, and how he transformed his body, his material body, into a spiritual one. The spiritual body is alone able to enter into the spiritual realm of the Lord, and no one but a pure devotee is eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. All mysteries of transcendental realization are duly explained by Narada Muni himself, and therefore, by hearing such an authority, one can have some ideas of the results of devotional service, which are hardly delineated even in the original texts of the Vedas. In the Vedas and Upanishads, there are only indirect hints to all this. Nothing is directly explained there, and therefore Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of all the Vedic trees of literature. Sutta Uvacha Evam Samvyasa Bhagwan Narado Vasavi Sutam Amantraya Vinam Ranayan Yayo Yadrichito Chikto Muni. Sutta Goswami said, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Sri Narada Muni took leave of him, and vibrating on his Veena instrument, he left to wander at his free will. Every living being is anxious for full freedom because of his transcendental nature, and this freedom is obtained only through the transcendental service of the Lord. Illusioned by external energy, everyone thinks that he is free, but actually, he is bound up by the laws of nature. A conditioned soul cannot freely move from one place to another, even on this earth, and what to speak of one planet to another. But a full fledged free soul like Narada, always engaged in chanting the Lord's glory, is free to move not only on earth, but also in any part of the universe, as well as in any part of the spiritual sky. We can just imagine the extent and unlimitedness of his freedom, which is as good as that of the Supreme Lord. There is no reason or obligation for his traveling, and no one can keep him from his free movement. Similarly, the transcendental system of devotional service is also free. It may or may not develop in a particular person, even after he undergoes all the detailed formulas. Similarly, the association of the devotee is also free. One may be fortunate to have it, or may not even have it, even after thousands of endeavors. Therefore, in all spheres of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. Without freedom, there is no execution of devotional service. The freedom surrendered to the Lord does not mean that the devotee becomes dependent in every respect. To surrender unto the Lord through the transparent medium of the spiritual master is to attain complete freedom of life. Aho deva sir danyo yam yat kritim sharan gadanvana gayan madyan idam tantriya ramayat ramayati aturam jagat. Translation: all glories and success to Sri Narada Muni, because he glorifies the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so doing, he himself takes pleasure and also enlivens all the distressed souls of the universe. Sri Narada Muni plays on his instrument to glorify the transcendental activities of the Lord and to give relief to miserable living entities of the universe. No one is happy here within the universe, and what is felt as happiness is Maya's illusion. The illusory energy of the Lord is also strong that even the hog who lives on filthy stool feels happy. No one can be truly happy within the material world. Srila Narad Muni, in order to enlighten the miserable inhabitants, wanders everywhere. His mission is to get them back home, back to Godhead. This is the mission of all genuine devotees of the Lord, following the footsteps of that great sage. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the first canto, sixth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation between Narada and Vyasa.
Yeah, you have a few more minutes if you want to read, but if you want to summarize and then read, that is also fine. So,
I'm gonna start summarizing.
yeah, sure.
So one point I truly liked in this is actually in this very last verse and in this purport. It talks about how the goal of Narada Muni is to deliver all the conditioned living entities in the material world. And I think this is something we all should be very fortunate about, because we have such a great sage like Narada Muni, who is spending a lot of time, and he's helping us with, even though we're very fallen. And it also says that this should be the mission of all devotees, and we should follow the footsteps of Narada Muni. So I just found that to be very inspiring. And another thing that I found is how we believe that we believe that that the happiness in the material world is true happiness, but in reality that isn't real happiness. We are just suffering even more. And I like the example of how Prabhupada talks about a hog thinking that it's in true happiness when it's actually just enjoying filthy stool. And I also like how Prabhupada explains that Narada Muni is always engaged in chanting the Lord's glory, and he's also free to move anywhere in this universe, and not only in this universe, in many universes, and also the spiritual sky. So this freedom that Narada Muni has is very powerful, and it's a very good thing that he's continuing his mission of delivering the fallen souls. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
You want to read a few more, or you are?
Okay, I think I'll start off a few
Sure.
verses in
5
chapter.
more minutes are there, so if you want.
Shaunaka uvacha nirgate narade sutta Bhagavan Badrayana Shrutavam stud abhipretam tata kim akarod vibhu. Translation. Rishi Shaunaka asked, O Sutta, the great and transcendentally powerful Vyasadeva heard everything from Sri Narada Muni. So after Narada's departure, what did Vyasadeva do? In this chapter, the clue for describing Srimad Bhagavatam is picked up by Maharaj Parikshit, is miraculously saved in the womb of his mother. This was caused by Drauni Ashwatthama, Acharya Drona's son, who was killed by who killed the 5 sons of Draupadi while they were asleep, for which they were punished by Arjuna. Before commencing the great epic Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Vyasadeva realized the whole truth by trance and devotion. Sutta Uvacha Brahmanadyam Saraswatyam Ashrama Paschimetate Shamya Prasa iti Prokta Rishinam Satra Vardana. Translation. Sri Sutta said, on the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there is a cottage for meditation at Samya Prasa, which enlivens the transcendental activities of the sages. For spiritual advancement of knowledge, a suitable place and atmosphere are definitely required. The place on the western bank of the Saraswati is especially suitable for this purpose. And there is the ashram of Vyasadeva at the Shamya Prasa, where Sri Vyasadeva was a householder, yet his residential place is called an ashram. An ashram is a place where spiritual culture is always foremost. It does not matter whether the place belongs to a householder or a mendicant. The whole Varnashrama system is so designed that each and every status of life is called an ashram. This means that spiritual culture is the common factor for all. The brahmacharis, the grahasthas, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis all belong to the same mission of life, namely the realization of the supreme. Therefore, none of them are less important as far as spiritual culture is concerned. The difference is a matter of formality on the strength of renunciation. The sannyasis are held in high estimation on the strength of practical renunciation. Tasmin sva ashrame vyaso badari sandamandite asinopa upashraya prani dadyo mana svayam. Translation. In that place, Sri Vyasadeva, in his own ashram, was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. Under the instructions of his spiritual master, Srila Narada Muni, Vyasadeva concentrated his mind in that transcendental place of meditation.
You want to say anything? I mean, the three verses.
Well, these three on one point I really liked was from verse 2, which talks about how all four varnashrama systems are of equal importance. It's not that one is superior to the other, as long as the main goal for each of them is a realization of the supreme, which is why it's called an ashram regardless of their belonging. So it's not that sannyasis are the only, or it's not that the place of like the brahmacharis and the sannyasis are only called ashram. I like that point.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Smriti. Next is my reading. Okay. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, text, chapter 7, text 4. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite amale apasyat purusham purnam mayam chatat apasrayam. Translation. Thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw the absolute personality of Godhead along with his external energy, which was under full control. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Perfect vision of the absolute truth is possible only by linking process of devotional service. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. One can perfectly realize the absolute truth personality of Godhead only by the process of devotional service, and one can enter into the kingdom of God by such perfect knowledge. Imperfect realization of the absolute by the partial approach of the impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma does not permit anyone to enter into the kingdom of God. Sri Narada advised Srila Vyasadeva to become absorbed in transcendental meditation on the personality of Godhead and his activities. Srila Vyasadeva did not take notice of the effulgence of Brahman because that is not absolute vision. The absolute vision is the personality of Godhead. As it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. In the Upanishads also it is confirmed that Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, is covered by the golden glowing Hiranmayena Patrena, wheel of impersonal Brahman. And when that curtain is removed, by the mercy of the Lord, the real face of the Absolute is seen. The Absolute is mentioned here as the Purusha, or the person. The absolute personality of Godhead is mentioned in so many Vedic literatures, and in the Bhagavad Gita, the Purusha is confirmed as the eternal and original person. The absolute personality of Godhead is the perfect person. The supreme person has manifold energies, out of which the internal, external, and marginal energies are specifically important. The energy mentioned here is the external energy. as will be the clear from the statements of her activities. The internal energy is there along with the absolute person as the moonlight is there with the moon. The external energy is compared to the darkness because it keeps the living entities in darkness of ignorance. The word apasrayam suggests that this energy of the Lord is under full control. The internal potency or superior energy is also called Maya, but it is spiritual Maya, or energy exhibited in the absolute realm. When one is under the shelter of this internal potency, the darkness of material ignorance is at once dissipated. And even those who are Atma Rama are fixed in trance take shelter of this Maya or internal energy. Devotional service or Bhakti Yoga is the function of the internal energy. Thus, there is no place for the inferior energy or material energy, just as there is no place for the darkness in the effulgence of spiritual light. Such internal energy is even superior to the spiritual bliss attainable in the conception of the impersonal Brahman. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that impersonal Brahman effulgence is also an emanation from the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The Paramapurusha cannot be anyone except Sri Krishna himself, as will be explained in the later slokas. Text 5. Ya sammohito jiva atmanam trigunaatmakam paro api manute anartham tatkrutam chavipadhyate. Translation. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The root cause of the suffering by the materialistic living beings is pointed out with remedial measures which are to be undertaken and also the ultimate perfection to be gained. All this is mentioned in this particular verse. The living beings is by constitution transcendental to material encasement, but he is now imprisoned by the external energy, and therefore he thinks himself one of the material products. And due to this unholy contact, the pure spiritual entity suffers material miseries under the modes of material nature. The living entity misunderstands himself to be a material product. This means that the present perverted way of thinking, feeling, and willing under material conditions is not natural for him, but he has his normal way of thinking, feeling, and willing. The living being in his original state is not without thinking, willing, or feeling power. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that the actual knowledge of the conditioned soul is now covered by the science. Thus, the theory that a living being is absolute impersonal Brahman is refuted herein. This cannot be because the living entity has his own way of thinking in his original unconditional state also. The present conditional state is due to the influence of the external energy, which means that the illusory energy takes the initiative while the Supreme Lord is aloof. The Lord does not desire that a living being be illusioned by external energy. That external energy is aware of this fact, but still she accepts a thankless task of keeping the forgotten soul under the illusion by her bewildering influence. The Lord does not interfere with the task of the illusory energy because such performances of illusory energy are also necessary for the reformation of a conditioned soul. An affectionate father does not like his children to be chastised by another agent. Yet he puts his disobedient children under the custody of a severe man just to bring them to order. But the all affectionate Almighty Father at the same time desires relief for the conditioned soul, relief from the clutches of the illusory energy. The king puts these disobedient citizens within the walls of the jail, but sometimes the king, desiring the prisoner's relief, personally goes there and pleads for reformation, and on his doing so, the prisoners are set free. Similarly, the Supreme Lord descends from his kingdom upon the kingdom of the illusory energy and personally gives relief in the form of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein he personally suggests that although the ways of the illusory energy are very stiff to overcome, one who surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord is set free by the order of the Supreme. This surrendering process is a remedial measure for getting relief from the bewildering ways of the illusory energy. The surrendering process is completed by the influence of association. The Lord has suggested, therefore, that by the influence of the speeches of the saintly persons, we have actually realized the supreme conditioned souls are engaged in his transcendental loving service. They get a taste for hearing about the Lord, and by such hearing only are they gradually elevated to the platform of respect, devotion, and attachment for the Lord. The whole thing is completed by the surrendering process. Herein also same suggestion is made by Lord in his incarnation of Vyasadeva. This means that the conditioned souls are being reclaimed by the Lord both ways, namely by the process of punishment by the external energy of the Lord and by himself as the spiritual master within and without. Within the heart of every living being, the Lord himself as the super soul Paramatma becomes the spiritual master. And from without, he becomes the spiritual master. From without, he becomes the spiritual master in the shape of scripture, saints, and the initiator spiritual master. This is still more explicitly explained in the next sloka. Personal superintendence of the illusory energy is confirmed in the Vedas, the Kena Upanishad, in relation to the demigods controlling power. Herein also it is clearly stated the living entity is controlled by the external energy in a personal capacity. The living being thus subjected to the control of the external energy is differently situated. It is clear, however, from the present statement of the Bhagavatam that the same external energy is situated in the inferior position because the personality because before the personality of Godhead or the perfect being. The perfect being or the Lord cannot be approached even by the illusory energy, who can only work on the living entities. Therefore, it is sheer imagination that the Supreme Lord is illusioned by the illusory energy and thus becomes a living being. If the living being and the Lord were in the same category, then it would have been quite possible for Vyasadeva to see it, and there would have been no question of material distress on the part of the illusion being, for the supreme being is fully cognizant. So there are so many unscrupulous imaginations on the part of the monists to endeavor to put both the Lord and the living being in the same category. Had the Lord and the living beings been the same, then Srila Sukadeva Goswami would not have taken the trouble to describe the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, for they would all be the manifestations of illusory energy. Srimad Bhagavatam, one more. Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum remedy for suffering humanity in the clutches of Maya. Srila Vyasadeva, therefore, first of all, diagnosed actual disease of the conditioned souls, that is, they being illusioned by the external energy. He also saw the perfect supreme being, from whom the illusory energy is far removed, though he saw both the disease's conditioned souls and also the cause of the disease, and the remedial measures are suggested in the next verse. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living beings are undoubtedly qualitatively one, but the Lord is the controller of the illusory energy, whereas the living entity is controlled by the illusory energy. Thus, the Lord and the living entities being simultaneously one and different. Another point is distinct herein, that eternal relation between the Lord and the living beings is transcendental. Otherwise, the Lord would not have taken trouble to reclaim the conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya. In the same way, the living entity is also required to revive his natural love and affection for the Lord, and that is the highest perfection of living entity. Of the living entity, Srimad Bhagavatam treats the conditioned soul with an aim to that goal of life. So here, in this chapter, after Narada Muni left, so what Vyasadeva has done, so he started meditating on the banks of river Saraswati, right? So then he was able to see by performing devotional service, by linking without any tinge of materialism, he was able to see both, right, the Lord and the external energy. External energy was able to see, which is under the control of the Lord. So Prabhupada very nicely explained in this purport. How a living entity gets controlled by Maya and thinks that he identifies with the external energy, thinks that this is the body, by the long association with the material nature. And the previous purport Prabhupada is saying, even in the previous chapter, even the hog is happy by being in that situation, right? So I was thinking the example of Lord Indra. So when he becomes a hog, so when Narada Muni comes and tells him, come back, you're an Indra. still he thinks that no, I'm happy in this life, right? I mean, I have my children, I'm happy what I'm getting and all. So I mean, even in our situation, it is. I mean, it will be very difficult to understand that we are in false thing, right? It's not actually real. It's like a maya, right? It's illusion. It's not real in the sense that it is not permanent, right? It is not eternal. It is keep changing, but we think that whatever is there and that is real, right? So until that goes from us, right? But still we continue to go to the next one and then keep going without being without understanding that it is illusion, right? So, and then in the next one, very long purport. So what Prabhupada is talking about, because this Maya is also the large energy, that's why it is very strong, right? So why does it keep the living entity in the material world? But it's like Prabhupada is giving the example of a father. So a father doesn't want his not obedient son to be suffering, but still he wanted to get him reformed, right? So Lord is doing in both ways by sending by having the living entities in this material world, which is like actually, I mean, I was keep thinking, right, when the material world is created, it is a thankless job, right? Because it's purpose of the the purpose of the creating this material world is to give suffering, right? So who does that? Who want to do that work? But still, I mean, Brahma does that creation, right? So it is actually to reform, and also the Lord comes. He just doesn't leave. Okay, let the living entity to suffer. He comes sometimes now and then he tries to give the process how to come back, right? So he gives the example of king visiting the prison house. So then the Bhagavatam is that kind of message. It will connect to the living entity to the supreme, right? That is the purpose of Bhagavatam, right? There, yeah, that's correct. Sanjay Prabhu is there.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah,
So from 6th, I can read, right?
text 6, Prabhu.
Text 6, okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, Verse 6. Anartho pasamam sakshat bhakti yogam adokshaje lokasya janato vidwams chakre satvata samhitam. Translation: the material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of the people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Purport by His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all perfect personality of Godhead. This statement suggests that the complete unit of the personality of Godhead includes his part and parcel also. He saw, therefore, his different energies, namely the internal energy, the marginal energy, and the external energy. He also saw his different planetary portion and part of the plenary portions, namely his different incarnations, also, and he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned soul, who are bewildered by the external energy. And at last, he saw the remedial measure for the conditioned soul, namely the process of devotional service. It is great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glories, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere effort of the devotee, he may endow him with his loving transcendental service. But even with the prescribed form of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of a superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Such mitigation of material affection does not wait for the development of the transcendental knowledge. Rather, knowledge is dependent on the devotional service for the ultimate realization of the supreme truth. Verse 7 Yasyam vai shruya mam nayam Krishne param purushe bhaktir utpadayate pumsa shoka moha bhaya. Translation: simply by giving oral reception to the Vedic literature, the feeling of loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. Purport: there are various senses, of which the ear is the most effective. This sense works even when the man is deep asleep. One can protect himself from the hands of the enemy while awake, but while asleep, one is protected by the ear only. The importance of hearing is mentioned here in a connection with attaining the highest perfection of life, namely getting free from three material pangs. Everyone is full of lamentation at every moment. He is after the mirage of illusory things, and he is always afraid of his supposed enemy. These are the primary symptoms of the material disease. It is the definitely suggested herein that simply by hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, one gets attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And as soon as this is effected, the symptoms of the material disease disappears. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead, and in this statement, the all-perfect personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is clearly confirmed. The ultimate result of devotional service is to develop a genuine love for Supreme Personality. Love is the word which is often used in the relationship with man and woman. And love is the only word that can be properly used to indicate the relationship between Lord Krishna and the living entities. The living entities are mentioned as Prakriti in the Bhagavad Gita. And in Sanskrit, Prakriti is feminine object. The Lord is the always described as Param Purusha or supreme male personality. Thus, the affection between the Lord and the living entity is something like that between the male and the female. Therefore, the term love of Godhead is quite appropriate. Loving devotional service to the Lord begins with hearing about the Lord. There is no difference between the Lord and the subject matter heard about him. The Lord is absolute in all respects, and thus there is no difference between him and the subject matter heard about him. Therefore, hearing about his means immediate contact with him by the process of vibration of the transcendental sound. And the transcendental sound is so effective that it acts as once by removing all material affections mentioned above. As mentioned before, the living entity develops a sort of complexity by material association. An illusory engagement of the material body is accepted as an actual fact. Under such false complexity, the living being under different categories of life becomes illusion in different ways. Even in the most developed stage of human life, the same illusion prevails in the form of many ism and divide a loving relation with the Lord, and thereby divides the loving relation between man and man. By hearing the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, this false complexity of materialism is removed, and real peace in society begins, which politicians aspire for so eagerly in so many political situations. The politicians wants a peaceful situation between man and man, nation and nation. But at the same time, because of too much attachment to the material domination, there is illusion and fearfulness. Therefore, a politician peace conference cannot bring about peace in society. It can only be done by hearing the subject matter described in Srimad Bhagavatam about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The foolish politicians may go on holding peace and summit conference for hundreds of years, but they will fail to achieve success. Until we reach the stage of re-establishing our lost relationship with Krishna, the illusion of accepting the body as a self will prevail, and thus fearfulness will also prevail. As for the validity of Sri Krishna as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from revealed scriptures, and there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from personal experience of devotees in various places like Vrindavan, Navadvip, and Puri. Even in Kaumudi dictionary, the synonyms of Krishna are given as the son of Yashoda and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Param Brahman. The conclusion is that simply by hearing the Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, one can have direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and thereby one can attain the highest perfection of life by transcending worldly miseries, illusion, and fearfulness. These are the practical tests for one who has actually given the submissive hearing to the reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So, these two verses actually includes the whole Krishna conscious philosophy, I would say. Both purports has so many things. We can just speak about every line, for a long time. But overall, the conclusion of philosophy and so nicely explained by Prabhupada. And one of the things that is really touching is in Srimad Bhagavatam, even in first canto, Lord Krishna's name is directly mentioned in the verse itself. That is, this Srimad Bhagavatam, the subject matter is clearly defined. And one of the things that Prabhupada says, about the trying to get the peace in this world, we can see so many things are happening around us, in not only in our country, everywhere else. And we are trying to bring peace for so many years. And Prabhupada also mentioned somewhere that United Nations was established for peace. But instead we see that we are fighting more often than before. And Prabhupada says the real peace will only be brought by the Krishna consciousness, and how we can see each other with compassion by connecting back to Lord Shri Krishna. And we realizing that we are a Prakriti, we are not the Purusha, that we are trying to grab material things and thinking that we can be happy by doing that, but that's not our natural position. Our natural position is Prakriti, being servant or being enjoyed by Krishna. So when we engage ourselves in a service we become happy, because that's our natural position, a fish in the water. So it is very nicely explained. Prabhu, what time I have to finish?
6, Prabhu.
Oh, 6, okay.
You're on time, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Is that what time? Okay.
But I want to ask everyone, whoever is in the call, stay back. We are at the closing, last half an hour. Okay.
Okay. Who is next? I'm just trying to find.
I
Chandra or Mataji. Mataji is here?
She's there.
yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, you can take over, Mataji.
He has been there from the morning.
Not
Oh, Hari Bol.
on and off, Prabhu. Only when I had a chance. But
Yeah,
thank
you're
you so
mostly
much.
there.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, Chapter 7, Text 8. Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmajam Shukham Madhyapayamasa Nivriti Niratam Munihi. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras compiled by the same author. The Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is meant for those who are already engaged in self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam is so made that one becomes at once engaged in the path of self-realization simply by hearing the topics. Although it is especially meant for the Paramhansas or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification. But even such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Sukadev Goswami was a liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth, and his father taught him Srimad Bhagavatam. Amongst mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of King Parikshit and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit was ruling the world as the king of Bharatavarsha, he chastised the personality of Kali. According to revealed scriptures, the astrological calculation, the age of Kali is in its 5,000th year. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5,000 years ago. Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. That is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under instruction of Narada. Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivritti Marga. The path of Pravritti Marga was condemned by Narada. That path is the natural inclination of the materialistic disease of the human being, or stopping completely the pangs of material existence. Text 9. Shaunaka vacha savai nivritti nirata sarvatro pikshako munihi Kashyava pratim etam atmarama samabhyasat. Translation. Sri Shaunaka asked Sutta Goswami. Sri Sukadev Goswami was already on the path of self-realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature? Purport. For the people in general, the highest perfection of life is to cease from material activities and be fixed on the path of self-realization. For those who take pleasure in sense enjoyment, or those who are fixed in materially material bodily welfare work are called karmis. Out of thousands and millions of such karmis, one may become an Atmarama by self-realization. Atma means self, and Arama means to take pleasure. Everyone is searching after the highest pleasure, but the standard of pleasure of one may be different from the standard of another. Therefore, the standard of pleasure enjoyed by the karmis is different from that of the Atmaramas. The Atmaramas are completely indifferent to material enjoyment in every respect. Srila Sukadev Goswami has already attained that stage, and still he was attracted to undergo the trouble of studying the great Bhagavatam literature. This means that Srimad Bhagavatam is a postgraduate study even for the Atmaramas. Wow. Who have surpassed all the studies of Vedic knowledge. Text 10. Sutta uvacha Atmaramascha munayo nirgrantha api urukrame kurvanti ahaitu kim bhaktim ittaham bhuta guno hari. Translation. All different varieties of Atmaramas, those who take pleasure in Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. Purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained this Atmarama shloka very vividly before his chief devotee, Srila Sanatana Goswami. He points out 11 factors in the shloka, namely Atmarama, Munaya, Nirgrantha, Api, Cha, Urukrama, Kurvanti, Ahaitukim, Bhaktim, Ittaham Bhuta Gunaha, and Hari. According to the Vishwa Prakash Sanskrit Dictionary, there are 7 synonyms for the word Atmarama, which are as follows: Brahman, the absolute truth; body, mind, endeavor, endurance, intelligence, and personal habits. The word Munaya refers to those who are thoughtful, those who are grave and silent, ascetics, the persistent, mendicants, sages, and saints. The word Nirgrantha conveys these ideas: one who is liberated from nescience, one who has no connection with spiritual injunction, that is, who is freed from the obligation of the rules and regulations mentioned in the revealed scriptures like ethics, Vedas, philosophy, psychology, metaphysics. In other words, fools, illiterates, urchins, etc., who have no connection with regulative principles, a capitalist, and also one who is penniless. According to the Shabdakosha dictionary, the affix ni is used in the sense of certainty, counting, building, and forbiddance, and the word grantha is used in the sense of wealth, theses, vocabulary, etc. The word Urukrama means the one whose activities are glorious. Krama means step. The word Urukrama specifically indicates the Lord's incarnation as Vamana, who covered the whole universe by immeasurable steps. Lord Vishnu is powerful, and his activities are so glorious that he has created the spiritual world by his internal potency and the material world by his external potency. By his all-pervading features, he is everywhere present as the supreme truth. And in his personal features, he is always present in his transcendental abode of Golaka Vrindavan, where he displays his transcendental pastimes in all variegatedness. His activities cannot be compared to anyone else's, and therefore the word Urukrama is just applicable to him only. According to Sanskrit verbal arrangement, kurvanti refers to doing things for someone else. Therefore, it means that the Atmaramas render devotional service unto the Lord, not for personal interest, but for the pleasure of the Lord, Urukrama. Hetu means causal. There are many causes for one's sense satisfaction, and they can be chiefly classified as material enjoyment, mystic powers, and liberation, which are generally desired by progressive persons. As far as material enjoyments are concerned, they are innumerable, and the materialists are eager to increase them more and more because they are under illusory energy. There is no end to the list of material enjoyments, nor can anyone in the material universe have all of them. As far as the mystic powers are concerned, they are 8 in all, such as to become the minutest in form, to become weightless, to have anything one desires, to lord over the material nature, to control over other living beings, to throw earthly globes in outer space, etc. These mystic powers are mentioned in the Bhagavatam. The forms of liberation are 5 in number. Therefore, unalloyed devotion means service to the Lord without desire for the above mentioned personal benefits. And the powerful personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, can be fully satisfied by such unalloyed devotees, free from all sorts of desires for personal benefit. Unalloyed devotional service of the Lord progresses in different stages. Practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81 different qualities. And above such activities is the transcendental practice of devotional service, which is one and is called sadhana bhakti. When unalloyed practice of sadhana bhakti is matured into transcendental love for the Lord, the transcendental loving service of the Lord begins gradually developing into 9 progressive stages of loving service under the headings of attachment, love, affection, feelings, affinity, adherence, following, ecstasy, and intense feelings of separation. The attachment of an inactive devotee develops up to the stage of transcendental love of God. Attachment of an active servitor develops up to the stage of adherence, and that for a friendly devotee develops up to the stage of following. And the same is also the case for the parental devotees. Devotees in conjugal love develop ecstasy up to the stage of intense feelings of separation. These are some of the features of unalloyed devotional service of the Lord. According to Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya, the import of the word Ittaham Bhuta is complete bliss. Transcendental bliss is the realization of impersonal Brahman becomes comparable to the scanty water contained in a pit made by a cow's hoof. It is nothing compared with the ocean of bliss of the vision of the personality of Godhead. The personal form of Lord Sri Krishna is so attractive that it comprehends all attraction, all bliss, and all taste rasas. These attractions are so strong that no one wants to exchange them for material enjoyment, mystic powers, and liberation. There is no need of logical arguments in support of this statement, but out of one's own nature, one becomes attracted by the qualities of Lord Sri Krishna. We must know for certain that the qualities of the Lord have nothing to do with mundane qualities. All of them are full of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. There are innumerable qualities of the Lord, and one is attracted by one quality while another is attracted by another.
Chandana Mataji,
Yes, Prabhu.
I was wondering, we're just coming close.
Hmm.
Would we hold here, continue?
Sure, Prabhu. Yeah. Okay, so it so it starts with that Vyasadeva actually taught the Srimad Bhagavatam to Sukadev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. And the reason for that is because although the Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for Paramhansas, it works into the depths of those who are worldly men as well. Right? And then there is the timeline of when the Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled versus Mahabharata, and the sequence and the Puranas is explained by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shaunaka Rishi actually asked Sita Goswami as well as to why did Sukhadev Goswami, who was already an Atmarama by self-realization, why did he undertake such a vast literature? So Srila Prabhupada is saying that Srimad Bhagavatam is actually the postgraduate study even for Atmaramas who have surpassed all the studies of Vedic knowledge. So even the Atmarama who is completely indifferent to material enjoyment, could undertake this postgraduate study. And then there is this beautiful description of the next text of the Atmarama, and how the Lord possesses transcendental qualities which can be which attracts anyone and everyone, including the Atmaramas. So this Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has actually described every word in this text pretty much in this Atmarama shloka, which is a famous shloka. So Nirgrantha, for example, means one who is liberated from nations. Munaya is a sage or a thoughtful person, and so on. And Urukrama is basically indicates the Lord's incarnation as Vamana, who was able to, who covered the entire universe by his steps. Then it goes on to explain how there are 5 forms of liberation, and unalloyed. It's only with unalloyed devotion that a person can actually achieve and understand the Lord. In the material, another very interesting thing is practice of devotional service in the material field has 81 different qualities, but above all of these qualities is sadhana bhakti, which is the transcendental practice of devotional service. And the attachment, it's just so amazing how Srila Prabhupada explains the 9 progressive stages of loving service, and how far each stage can the kind of a devotee can reach, how far of these stages. So again, just so very explicit, but I'll stop here. I think I'm actually a minute above anyway.
No much share, Mataji. You highlight. Waiting for the punch.
Yeah, so the punch is really that once again, the thing that we know all the time, that the Lord Shri Krishna is so attractive, and comprising of all the rasas, and any sane person would not want to exchange for any material advancement, any kind of mystic powers liberation. And this is something that we've been learning in the Nectar of Devotion as well. Rupa Goswami has mentioned so many times, and a very graphic thing was one who gets devotional service. Well, one graphical thing is that devotional service is like the queen, and mukti and bhukti and anything else are like servants that follow the queen anyway. So that's what it is. The attraction to Lord Sri Krishna and the devotional service is above and beyond anything at all, any mundane activity or qualities or anything. So,
and also very explicit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So we have Sangeeta Mata is not joining in, but Shadrupa hasn't read, and then Rupa Mata also did not read. She has been trying multiple times. So we have 4 of us. So please feel free, to go on your pace, however long you all want to read. Okay. Um, who can go next?
Rupamate, would you like to go?
I can read one text, Mataji, and if you can take over, please.
Okay, it's in the middle. Whatever is
Oh,
projected, that's where we
okay.
have to start. Yeah.
Okay. Great sages such as the 4 bachelor devotees, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanatakumara, were attracted by the fragrance of flowers and tulsi leaves, anointed with the pulp of sandalwood offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, Shukadeva Goswami was attracted by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Shukadeva Goswami was already situated in the liberated stage, yet he was attracted by the pastimes of the Lord. This proves that the quality of his pastimes has nothing to do with material affinity. Similarly, the young cowherd damsels were attracted by the bodily features of the Lord, and Rukmini was attracted by hearing about the glories of the Lord. Lord Krishna attracts even the mind of the goddess of fortune. He attracts, in special cases, the minds of all young girls. He attracts the minds of the elderly ladies by parental affection. He attracts the minds of the males in the humors of servitude and friendship. The word Hari conveys various meanings, but the chief import of the word is that he, the Lord, vanquishes everything inauspicious and takes away the mind of the devotee by awarding pure transcendental love. By remembering the Lord in acute distress, one can be free from all varieties of miseries and anxieties. Gradually, the Lord vanquishes all obstacles on the path of devotional service of a pure devotee, and the result of 9 devotional activities, such as hearing and chanting, becomes manifested. By his personal features and transcendental attributes, the Lord attracts all psychological activities of a pure devotee. Such is the attractive power of Lord Krishna. The attraction is so powerful that a pure devotee never hankers for any one of the 4 principles of religion. These are the attractive features of the transcendental attributes of the Lord. And adding to this, the words api and cha, one can increase the imports unlimitedly. According to Sanskrit grammar, there are 7 synonyms for the word api. So by interpreting each and every word of the shloka, one can see unlimited numbers of transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna that attract the mind of a pure devotee. Text 11.
Prabhu, Shadrupa.
Mataji, you want to read or you want to summarize?
I can summarize one text, Prabhu, and I will be in listening mode.
Okay, sure, Mataji.
At least from what I read, the 2 paragraphs, it is about Lord Krishna. I mean, he's said to be the all attractive. So he attracts. I mean, he has all the qualities, that is, all the eternal qualities, definitely, and he attracts everybody. He attracts, I think, all people, all ages, and all genders, I would say. So it is attracting the young girls and attracting the elderly people, and in different rasas he attracts, and he also helps in uh, taking away all the difficulties of a pure devotee.
Yeah. That's good, Mataji. You have anything more?
No problem, that's all I have.
What, Mataji?
No problem. That's all I have.
That's all you have.
Thank you.
Hari Bol. Shatrupa,
Okay.
we'll take one.
Text 11. Harer gunakshiptamatir Bhagavan Badarayanihi Adhyutan Mahad Akhyanam Nityam Vishnu Janapriyaha. Sri Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendently powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus, he underwent the study of this great narration, Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport. According to Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Srila Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul even within the womb of his mother. Srila Vyasadeva knew that the child after his birth would not stay at home. Therefore, he, Vyasadeva, impressed upon him the synopsis of the Bhagavatam so that the child could be made more attached to the transcendental activities of the Lord. After his birth, the child was still more educated in the subject of the Bhagavatam by recitation of actual poems. The idea is that generally the idea is that Krishna, there's so much scrolling happening in my screen. The idea is that generally the liberated souls are attached to the features of impersonal Brahman with a monistic view of becoming one with the Supreme Whole. But by the association of pure devotees like Vyasadeva, even the liberated soul becomes attracted to the transcendental qualities of the Lord. By the mercy of Sri Narada, Srila Vyasadeva was able to narrate the great epic Srimad Bhagavatam. And by the mercy of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadeva Goswami was able to grasp the import. The transcendental qualities of the Lord are so attractive that Srila Sukadeva Goswami became detached from being completely absorbed in the impersonal Brahman and positively took up the personal activity of the Lord. Practically, he was thrown from the impersonal conception of the Absolute, thinking within himself that he had simply wasted so much time in devoting himself to the impersonal feature of the Supreme. Or, in other words, he realized more transcendental bliss with the personal feature than the impersonal. And from that time, not only did he himself become very dear to the Vishnu Janas or the devotees of the Lord, but also Vishnu Janas became very dear. The devotees of the Lord who do not wish to kill the individuality of the living entities and who desire to become personal servitors of the Lord do not very much like the impersonalists. And similarly, the impersonalists who desire to become one with the Supreme are unable to evaluate the devotees of the Lord. Thus, from time immemorial, these two transcendental pilgrims have been competitors. In other words, each of them likes to keep separate from the other because of ultimate personal and impersonal realizations. Therefore, it appears that Srila Sukadeva Goswami also had no liking for the devotees. He himself became a saturated devotee. He desired always the association of Vishnu Janas, and the Vishnu Janas also liked his association since he became personal Bhagavata. Both the son and the father were completely cognizant of transcendental knowledge in Brahman, and afterwards both of them became absorbed in the personal features of the Supreme Lord. The question as to how Shukadeva Goswami was attracted by the narration of the Bhagavatam is thus completely answered in this shloka, by this shloka. Okay, I'll pause here, right? Mhm. 27 already. Should I pause here?
Yeah, yes, Shatrupa.
So, this text 11 is the very important verse for us in one sense, because the speaker, it says about how the speaker of Bhagavatam became attracted to Bhagavatam.
Mhm.
I know. Because initially it was about how the composer of Bhagavatam was attracted, or how he put out Bhagavatam, because he was dissatisfied and he got instruction and Vasudev wrote. Now, how the speaker of Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, he is the person who perfected by Kirtanam of speaking Bhagavatam. Now he became attracted to Bhagavatam. So that is something, it was very beautiful. And this only says that Krishna and Bhagavatam are non-different, because as Krishna is all attractive, similarly Bhagavatam also is all attractive. So um, it only requires just the way, how even to get attracted to Krishna, we do have to pay little attention. Similarly, to get attracted to Bhagavatam, we have to just give a little time, like 2 minutes or 1 minute or like whatever we can give. Uh, that's what was striking to me uh, in this description of how Shukadeva Goswami got attracted.
Hmm.
So,
Very
yeah.
nice, Rupa.
Yeah.
Okay, now the Bhagavatam is appeared. The narrations will start. Vrindavan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Text 12, Canto 1, Chapter 7. Parikshitota Rajarsher Janma Karma Vilapanam Samstam Cha Panduputranam Vakshe Krishna Katodayam. Translation. Suta Goswami thus addressed the rishis headed by Shaunaka. Now I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Sri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage amongst the king, as well as topics of the renunciation of the worldly order by the sons of Pandu. Purport. Lord Krishna is so kind to the fallen souls that he personally incarnates himself among the different kinds of living entities and takes part with them in daily activities. Any historical fact, old or new, which has a connection with the activities of the Lord is to be understood as a transcendental narration of the Lord. Without Krishna, all the supplementary literature like the Puranas and Mahabharata are simply stories or historical facts, but with Krishna, they become transcendental. And when we hear of them, we at once become transcendentally related with the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam is also a Purana, but the special significance of this Purana is that the activities of the Lord are central and not just supplementary historical facts. Srimad Bhagavatam is thus recommended by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the spotless Purana. There is a class of less intelligent devotees of the Bhagavata Purana who desire to relish at once the activities of the Lord narrated in the 10th canto without first understanding the primary cantos. They are under the false impression that the other cantos are not concerned with Krishna, and thus, more foolishly than intelligently, they take to the reading of the 10th canto. These readers are specifically told herein that the other cantos of Bhagavatam are as important as the 10th canto. No one should try to go into the matters of the 10th canto without having thoroughly understood the purport of the other 9 cantos. Krishna and his pure devotees, like the Pandavas, are on the same plane. Krishna is not without his devotees of all the rasas, and the pure devotees, like the Pandavas, are not without Krishna. The devotees and the Lord are interlinked, and they cannot be separated. Therefore, talks about them are all Krishna Katha, are topics of the Lord. So, we are almost at the end for the today's Yajna. And I was thinking of the point theme that Premananda Mataji introduced, devotee association. So if not for the devotee association, in terms of Guru Parampara and Srila Prabhupada, it would be actually very difficult to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Like Prabhupada is telling here, it remains an historical fact instead of a transcendental truths that we can pursue and relate naturally. It remains another book. So, but because of the devotee association, it doesn't remain just like that. So that is what I'm connecting here. And also reading Bhagavatam completely is important, not just going to the 10th canto where it's actually immature to directly go to 10th canto, because most of it actually anyway we don't understand. At least if I would have read the Mataji's verse, Premananda Mataji's verse alone by myself, I would never understand it, because most of the time we study through devotees, we get Bhagavatam or we get purification. But morning verse in a way says after we get purified, then only you'll get the association of devotees. So it's like only with the devotees' mercy we will be able to understand. So association is so important. So I want to conclude at that. So Hare Krishna.
Wow. Okay. So we Bhagavatam is appeared, and then 12-hour yajna is complete, and now we will have a cherry on the topping. Why Amrita Kelly Dasi Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, The Son of Drona Punished, and texts 13 and 14. Yadamrite Kaurava Sanjayanam Vireshvatho Viragatim Gateshu Vrikodara Vidragadabhimarsha Bhagno Rudande Dhritarashtraputre Bhattu Priyam Drauniritisma Pashyan Krishna Sutanam Swapatam Shiramshi Upatarad Vipriyameva Tasya Jugukritam Karma Vigarhayanti. Translation. When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimasena, the son of Dronacharya, Ashwadhama, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered them as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least. But transcendental topics of the activities of Lord Shri Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam begin from the end of the battle at Kurukshetra, where the Lord himself spoke about himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are transcendental topics of Lord Krishna. The Gita is Krishna Kadha, or topics of Krishna, because it is spoken by the Lord. And the Bhagavatam is also Krishna Kadha because it is spoken about the Lord. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone to be informed of both Krishna Kadhas by his order. Lord Krishna Chaitanya is Krishna himself in the garb of a devotee of Krishna. And therefore, the versions of both Lord Krishna and Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are identical. Lord Chaitanya desired that all who are born in India seriously understand such Krishna Kadhas, and then after full realization, preach the transcendental message to everyone in all parts of the world.
that will bring about the desired peace and prosperity of the stricken world. I think this is a beautiful place, probably for us to conclude our yajna. I was really appreciating Srila Prabhupada writing this purport. I mean, the verse is actually talking about the battlefield and Ashwadhama, it's giving the context where it's beginning. But Prabhupada is so beautifully bringing our attention to how this is being related to Krishna, and the importance for us to understand this. He's giving both Krishna Katha. One is being directly spoken by him, and the other is spoken about him in relation with all his wonderful devotees and such pleasing pastimes. And this last statement particularly is very striking, especially for our Bhagavata Mahayajna today, for the pleasure of Srimati Radharani. Lord Chaitanya desired that all who are born in India, we can say wherever we are born, seriously understand such Krishna Kathas, and then after full realization, preach the transcendental message to everyone in all parts of the world. That will bring about the desired peace and prosperity of the stricken world. Yeah, just very inspiring to connect with Bhagavatam. In this way, I couldn't join in here throughout, but I was like on and off hearing. But just whichever part we are hearing, it's so beautiful. I randomly started hearing, I think around 5:30 or so. And this purport is talking about the freedom. Only when we actually connect to the Lord, that is when we can get real freedom. Whatever we do other way, it's not possible. So I was really appreciating that aspect. Wherever, however, whichever page we can connect to Bhagavatam is so wonderful, and having this opportunity is very, very awesome in this particular day. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Is that all, Mataji? Hare Krishna?
Yes, Prabhu.
Is that all?
Yeah, I thought you wanted to close soon. So I just read one verse, and that to this purport, I felt it's nice.
Okay. Okay, I was thinking we can read a couple of translations at least.
I can read
Just
if
three,
you have time.
just 2-3 more, that's all.
Sure, Prabhu. I'll read the Sanskrit and translation.
Yeah.
Okay. Text 15. Mata shishunam nidhanam sutanam nishamya ghoram paritapyamana tadarudadvashpa kalakulakshi tam santvayannaha kiritamali. Draupadi, the mother of 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her sons, began to cry in distress with eyes full of tears. Trying to pacify her in her great loss, Arjuna spoke to her thus. Text 16. Tada shuchaste pramrajami bhadre yad brahma bandho shira atatayina gandiva muktair vishikhair upahare vakramya yatsnasya siddha putra. O gentle lady, when I present you with the head of that Brahmana, after beheading him with arrows from my Gandiva bow, I shall then wipe the tears from your eyes and pacify you. Then, after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head. 17. Iti priyam valgu vichitra jalpai sasantvaitva chuta mitra suta Anvadravadamshita ugradhanva kapidvajo guruputram rathena. Arjuna, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set out to follow Ashwadhama, the son of his martial teacher. Shall we read until the Krishna Krishna Mahabaho?
Yeah, that's exactly Mataji.
Yeah, I was thinking just couple more verses. Yeah. Text 18. Tamapatantam savilakshya durat kumarahod-vignamana-rathena paradravat prana pariptur urvyam yavat gamam rudra bhayad yathaka. Ashwatthama, the murderer of the princess, seeing from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic-stricken, just to save his life, as Brahma fled in fear from Shiva. 90. Yada sharanam aikshata shrantavajinam astram brahma shiro mene atmatranam dvijatmajaha. When the son of the Brahmana, Ashwatthama, saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, nuclear weapon. 20. अथोपस्पृश्य सलिलं सन्दधे तत्समाहितः अजानन्नपि संहारं प्राणकृच्छ्रा उपस्थिते. Since his life was in danger, he touched the water in sanctity and concentrated upon the chanting of the hymns for throwing nuclear weapons, although he did not know how to withdraw such weapons. 21. ततः प्रादुष्कृतं तेजा प्रचण्डं सर्वतो दिशं प्राणापदम् अभिप्रेक्ष्य विष्णुं जिष्णुरुवाचः. Thereupon a glaring light spread in all directions. It was so fierce that Arjuna thought his own life in danger, and so he began to address Lord Shri Krishna. 22. Arjuna uvacha Krishna Krishna Mahabaho Bhaktanam Abhayankara Tvameko Dahyamananam Apavaddosi Samsmrite. Arjuna said, "O my Lord Shri Krishna, you are the Almighty Personality of Godhead. There is no limit to your different energies. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the hearts of your devotees. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the hearts of your devotees. Everyone in the flames of material miseries can find the path of liberation in you only."
Okay. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you, all the devotees. Very fortunate and blessed. It's only by Srila Prabhupada's mercy we're able to offer this 12-hour yajna. And if Krishna willing, Guru and Krishna willing, we'll have one more on Bhadra Purnima day. Okay. So Lingaraju Prabhu, you can stop the live stream.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. Okay.